You know, Jonah, when you say Trumpism is kind of a psychological phenomenon, what do you mean? I mean, you say it's coming out of Trump's brain, but how does that affect everybody around him?
My colleague at National Review, Rick Brookhiser, pointed out that Donald Trump actually needs weak supporters in the sense of weak-minded. And Donald Trump demands weak-mindedness from people. He demands that people around him nod their head and celebrate when he says something stupid. They can't criticize him. And the most profound example of this is that if you look at, I don't know, like Senator Bob Corker or Senator Ben Sasse or even Mitch McConnell, who are sort of hated by the Breitbart crowd because they have dared to criticize Donald Trump or say they disagree with him or condemned the Access Hollywood tape or whatever. Those are the people who are being driven from the Republican Party. But if you actually look at their voting records, they voted with Trump between 85 and 99% of the time. Meanwhile, you look at Rand Paul, who has done more to thwart Donald Trump's legislative agenda than any other senator. But he always praises Donald Trump. Always says Donald Trump is a great guy.
Right.
And the Breitbart crowd, the Bannon crowd, Donald Trump himself, they never go after him because what's more important is the president's vanity than the actual legislative or ideological agenda. It is, I keep trying to tell people who want to say that Donald Trump is Hitler. He's not Hitler. Hitler could have repealed Obamacare. Donald Trump is basically not interested in politics. He's interested in praise. He's interested in his own ratings, as it were. And the legislative and ideological agenda takes a back seat. And I think one of the reasons why Republican politics and CPAC and all of these things are so ugly right now is that he goes wherever he gets the most adoration. And so he goes to these rallies and he says terrible things about immigrants, terrible things about Mexicans, and it revs them up and he draws sustenance from that. And he says, aha, these are the kinds of talking points I need to continue with because that's where I get the greatest support. And that's not a political agenda. That is a bizarre psychological phenomenon.
What about the support of white evangelicals and the support of women? Combine those two groups and tell me what kind of support they are giving Trump today.
The Republican Party has had a problem with white suburban women, never mind African-American women, for a while. Are they soccer moms? Are they security moms? George W. Bush won or lost based upon tweaking at the very fine margins turnout among those women because they are the difference between victory and defeat. And Donald Trump, I haven't looked at the polls closely on this question lately, but Donald Trump has huge problems in the affluent, college-educated, suburban segments of this country, which, contrary to a lot of journalism out there and contrary to Donald Trump's own assumptions, is more of the base, the more important part of the Republican coalition than the non-college educated sort of white rural voter. And suburban Republicans who may, and particularly suburban women Republicans or Republican-leaning women, who may actually agree and like the tax cuts and like the judges and like this and like that, at the same time are just embarrassed by the president's composure and demeanor and his tactics and his rhetoric. And people, I think, this is my own theory, and I'm sure you've seen this as you go around the country, it's just that Donald Trump sucks up all the oxygen. Everyone feels like he gets in everyone's head. And I think the Republicans going into the midterms are going to have a real problem with those people. As for evangelicals, I'm dismayed. I've spent most of my professional life defending white evangelical conservatives. I think they've been in the past really unfairly demonized in the culture and in the press. But what has happened, particularly under the leadership of people like Jerry Falwell Jr., has been, I would say it's scandalous, but it's just plain fascinating. In 2011, the slice of the electorate that was least likely to forgive sexual or other personal transgressions in a politician were white evangelicals. Only 30% of white evangelicals had said, if you are a bad person in your private life, you cheat on your wife, whatever, however they use the form the question. If you're immoral in your private life, you probably can't be a good public servant either. Only 30% felt that you could be a good public servant and be immoral in your private life. In 2016, not only did that number more than double, like something like 71% of white evangelicals now say that, or at least in 2016 said that you could be immoral in your private life and still be a good public leader. White evangelical voters who are in the popular culture considered these Comstockish, prudish, puritanical people are now the most forgiving of personal lapses of morality in politicians than any other demographic.
It almost sounds as though there's a kind of brainwashing going on.
Well, I think there is, in a sense that I think part of it is the deeply transactional nature of the Trump presidency, where he basically just says, you guys need to support my ego and say nice things about me, and in exchange, I'll give you your judges and I'll give you the laws that you want and I'll be against abortion and all that. And I think there are a lot of people who've just made that Machiavellian calculation. But at a broader level, one of my pet intellectual peeves is the phrase power corrupts, because if you actually go back to where Lord Acton actually coined that phrase, he wasn't talking about power corrupting the very powerful people. He was talking about how very powerful people corrupt everybody else, that the need to make allowances for and to forgive the transgressions of the very powerful is corrupting of the soul for intellectuals and politicians and normal people. And, it goes to the useful idiots who defended Stalin, to the useful idiots who defended Hitler, to the people, who glorified Castro from afar. And there's a similar dynamic here where people feel compelled to defend and support a guy because Donald Trump craves it so much. And it's part of the political corruption that's going on, is that Donald Trump has made it very clear that you must heap and lavish praise upon him to prove your support. And people are willing to do it. And it astonishes me.
So where does all of this leave people like you who called themselves conservatives?
Well, look, it's not been a fun couple of years. This is not I don't enjoy a lot of what's happened, and I've lost some friendships, and it's been rough. But, I've fallen back on the safe harbor, as my friend Mona Charen put it the other day, of just telling the truth and telling it like I see it, because I think that's the first rule of journalism. The first rule of being an intellectual of any sort is just being honest and not lying. And one of the most dismaying things I've seen in the last 2 years is how many people started out lying about Donald Trump and now actually believe the lies. And that's very creepy to me.
Who are you talking about?
Oh, people, I'm not going to get directly into names, but there are pundits and people, colleagues at Fox News who, like 2 years ago, would say to me, I can't believe I have to defend this guy. And I would respond, you don't. That's not your job. And now if you talk to them, they don't say, I can't believe I have to defend this guy. They actually believe what they're saying about him. I mean, that's the kind of brainwashing that drives me absolutely batty. It's an invasion of the body snatchers feeling, where your friends go to sleep one night and wake up in the morning, praising our new orange overlord. And you're like, what happened to you? I don't get it.